Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Ian Rappaport was the first to have it. A new quarterback in Carolina, he tweeted earlier this afternoon. Panthers acquiring former number 1 overall pick Baker Mayfield from the Browns for a 2024 conditional 5th-round draft pick. Deal is pending a physical. All parties split the financials to make it happen. So that is really the crux, which we'll get to here in a second. But the reason we are going to start with this, and it may seem obvious to some, but maybe not to all, so I'll explain. This is very relevant here because this affects directly 3 games that the New Orleans Saints will play in 2022. Of course, the Saints will play the Panthers twice, but they also play the Cleveland Browns. As we have talked about the Browns situation, the quarterback situation, because it's very relevant. What happens with Deshaun Watson? If Watson's suspended, kind of as long as Mayfield had been on the roster there was at least some thought that he was an insurance plan if Watson were suspended. Well, now that's no longer an option. So if Deshaun Watson remains suspended, the Saints, when they go to Cleveland in Week 16, are going to face Jacoby Brissett. That's a pretty good option if you're a Saints fan. So we'll get to how this affects New Orleans here in just a second. The big sticking point with Baker all along was the contract. Of course, the Browns had picked up his 5th-year option, which guaranteed him about $19 million. And the Browns didn't want to pay that, but then what NFL team was going to be willing to pay Baker Mayfield $19 million this year? I mean, he's a quarterback that hasn't proved to be worth that number, especially coming off of an injury-plagued season this past year. Now, 2 years ago, when he led the Browns to the playoffs and a playoff win against the Steelers, he certainly looked like a quarterback that was on the come, that was realizing the potential that he had when he was taken first overall. I personally think Baker more closely resembles that quarterback than the one he was in 2021, but injury sort of derailed the season. We conveniently forget, many of us conveniently forget the fact that Baker was playing through injury last year when, had he just tapped out, then maybe our perception of him is entirely different. But that's another story for a different day. The money was the big part of it, and this from Mike Garafolo over at NFL Network. The Browns will pay Baker Mayfield $10.5 million this season. Again, the Browns are going to pick up more than half of his salary, but this means they trimmed about $8 million in cash and cap space for the 2022 season. The Panthers will pay Baker Mayfield approximately $5 million, and Baker Mayfield took a cut. He agreed to trim $3.5 million off his base salary. You don't think he wanted out of Cleveland? When do professional athletes in their prime ever agree to a pay cut? You can tell how badly both sides wanted this divorce. Cleveland's willing to eat $10 million, and Baker's willing to take a $3.5 million pay cut just to get out of Cleveland. So, good for them. Their divorce is now finalized, and what we all assumed was going to happen, and most likely to happen, Baker ending up in Carolina. The other option probably would have been Seattle, right? Would have been the most likely option after they traded away Russell Wilson. But now Baker's in Carolina. So there's a short and a long-term view for Carolina. Of course, Baker right now will be playing this season under the final year of his contract. If you're Carolina, do you really sign Baker Mayfield to a long-term extension? That's hard to imagine at this point. And if you're Baker, would you sign a long-term extension, which would very likely be at a discounted rate given what your previous 4-year track record is in the NFL? It's also a little bit of a jab to Cleveland to know that you traded Baker for a conditional 5th-round pick. You had to eat $10 million, and you got a conditional 5. Basically, there's incentives, playing time, and such that it can't convert to a 4, but it's basically a 5th-round pick in the 2024 draft. If you're Carolina, and that's kind of the prism we need to look at this because that's what the Saints care more about. That's a division opponent you're going to play twice a year. if you're Carolina, you don't have to commit to Baker Mayfield. I'd be very surprised if they committed a long-term deal to him. You've got Sam Darnold still on your roster. You drafted Matt Corral, and now you have Baker. And you almost have, this is almost like where the Saints were a year ago with Jameis, where you got what amounts to a one-year deal to test drive the car and see if this is the direction you want to go. If it is, great. Then you give him a long-term deal after the season and you're all happy and good. If not, maybe it's Matt Corral, maybe it's another option. It's very likely, though, is at Sam Darnold's time, which he kind of was on the one-year test drive a year ago and it didn't work out so well. So I would be surprised if Carolina committed a long-term contract to Baker Mayfield. All you basically had to do was give up a conditional fifth-round pick to have a starting quarterback for 1 year in the NFL. Like, that's a pretty good trade-off, considering a lot of times your day 3 draft picks don't even make your team. So now that's a 2024 conditional fifth-round pick. I get why Carolina does this deal. It makes a lot of sense for Carolina. You're better at quarterback with Baker than you are with Darnold or presumably with a rookie in Matt Corral, and you got it for a super affordable rate. Corral took a discount. You get a starting quarterback for about $5 million. Again, it's been to the playoffs, won a playoff game, all that stuff. It makes sense. Now, for New Orleans, we talked about how this affects Week 16 when you go to Cleveland. Week 16, you go to Cleveland. Now you know you're not going to face Baker Mayfield. There's no shot at that. It's Deshaun Watson or Jacoby Brissett. The hope, if you're a Saints fan, is Deshaun Watson suspended for the year, and you go to Cleveland Week 16, and you're facing Jacoby Brissett, which is which I will stand by this. The Saints with Jameis Winston have a quarterback advantage and are a better football team than the Browns with Jacoby Brissett. I will stand by that, and I think the Saints should be a road favorite in that game and should win it. With Baker in Cleveland, in Carolina, you play at Carolina Week 3, and then you're home against Carolina Week 18. I actually like playing Carolina on the road first and in Week 3. And the correlation I'll give you is 2020 when Tom Brady had his first season in Tampa. You remember Tom Brady's first ever game with the Bucs? Tom Brady's first ever game with the Bucs was in the Superdome. And the Saints won that one 34-23. Janoris Jenkins picked 6 to Tom Brady. They intercepted him twice in that ball game. It took about a half a season for Tampa with Tom Brady to get comfortable. Him with his receivers and the timing and the offense. Remember, Joe Brady's not in Carolina anymore. He got run. So you're talking about a different offense, a new voice, a new quarterback, all that sort of stuff. I like the Saints. I like the Saints playing them early in the season, and that gives you, I think, a better chance early in the season to win that game on the road as opposed to in Week 18. And if there's a benefit there, it's the fact that in Week 18 you're at home. So yes, you would assume by that point Baker Mayfield and the Browns or the Panthers will be more in tune, in line, but at the same time, you get that game at home, so it's probably more beneficial for New Orleans then. All things considered, I like the way this works out for New Orleans. Yes, clearly, I would have preferred that Baker Mayfield go to Seattle, where you don't really have to worry about it, although the Saints do play Seattle this year. But that game is in the Dome. Much lesser team than Baker going to Carolina. But for what it is and how it played out, I think this is about as good as you could have hoped for in this situation for New Orleans. So it is official. Baker Mayfield has been traded to the Carolina Panthers. There's no reason for Carolina to play any other quarterback. I mean, he's going to Carolina to be the starter. This isn't a competition with Darnold and with Matt Corral. It's Baker Mayfield's job for this year. In the same way that last year, Jameis Winston was the Saints starting quarterback. For all the hoopla about a quarterback competition and, is Taysom Hill really? No. It was always going to be Jameis. He was test driving the car to see if they wanted to commit to him long term. That's what this is for Baker in Carolina. We'll see how he does. The Saints will get to see him twice. And for the Saints, this directly impacts 3 games, 3 opponents that the Saints will play this year with Cleveland Week 16, then the 2 games against Carolina. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.